Hello and welcome to another exciting episode, I should say, of Coffee with the Commodore. I am Commodore Skip, and once again, I am not affiliated with any military organization, any merchant fleet, and I can barely spell ship. So there you go. Hope everybody had a very good Thanksgiving holiday. Um, I did. Been working a lot. But still has some time to get some games in, so that's exciting. So let's get right to it. Today's coffee in my Santa mug, because it is the holidays, is pecan from somewhere. I'm not really sure where. I think it's from like Tennessee, something like that. But it's actually delicious this morning. So get right to that. What is the subject today, Commodore? Well, been kind of thinking about it over the holidays and getting ready to start a campaign with Castles and Crusades. So I've been dealing a lot with character creation and my thoughts on how I'm going to have my players create their characters and things like that. So I kind of wanted to talk about how I go about if I'm going to sit down and make a character either like for a one shot versus going through and making one for an actual long term campaign. And they're similar, but they're different. Um, Starting with, and this is going to be for just generic. I'm not going to specifically go through each system, that I've created characters for because that'll take forever. But just kind of my thought processes. So we'll start with just the one shots. Generally, with one shots like on the old ways or symphony or whatever that comes along, play testing things like that. The GM creates the character, which is cool. You just they give you a list, and you go into Thunderdome and you fight it out with the other players, and one person comes out with the character that you choose. So very simple. But then you look at the character itself and you see, okay, all right, so we'll take Call of. We'll have to use an example. So we'll take Call of Cthulhu in this particular event, since that's the most of the stuff that I do one shots for and play tests. So you look at the character. Let's say I've taken on the role of the old professor, which is where I seem to lean for some reason. Maybe because I'm old and I've always wanted to be a professor. Um, but I look at the skills, and then I just kind of get in my mind um, what that character is going to play, what I play like. Am I going to use my old man voice, or am I going to, play him even if he's not an old professor, as a professor? Am I going to play him as a young, um, you know, Indiana Jones kind of professor, or am I going to professor from Gilligan's Island? Something like that. So that's the first thing I do is when I pick that character, I just kind of look at it and go, okay, so what's this guy's or gal's personality? Because I don't mind playing either male or female. It doesn't matter to me. Um, just depends on what mood I'm in, I guess. But uh, what's the motivation? Is there anything that the keeper has provided, like valuable items or anything like you've been touched by ghosts or whatever? I make some quick notes on index cards. I'm a big fan of index cards. I really am, because one, they're handy. I have this huge box of them right here on my desk. But I make little notes on there, um, like key stats. What am I going to, what's his spot hidden? What is their primary status? Is it archaeology? Whatever. And I'll put that down, and then I'll make little notes like, okay, he's got a pocket watch that was given to him by his dad, or he has a cut on his right eye because his sister got mad and punched him for taking her doll, or whatever, something like that. So you don't really have to worry about rolling stats or anything like that because it's already provided for you. Um, and then from there, I'll generally, once the game getting ready to start, you roll your luck. Usually I roll like a three or something terrible. And then that just kind of adds to how I'm going to play the character. Um, so one shots is pretty easy in my mind. You have the stats, you have everything there. It's just developing the personality. Um, am I a fan of one shots? Yeah. When it comes to like play testing and just having a good time for one evening, it's fine. I love it. I love play testing. I love getting in there and seeing what this is going to bring, and things like that. Would I want to do it all the time? No, no. Um, I have been at this since, golly, 77. I think 77 now, since 1977. Um, and I've done a lot of campaigns, and I may do a video on some of the campaigns that I was in because I'd like to give credit where credit is due. And I've played with several great game masters, and I might have it to a video on that. But if anybody wants to hear about it, um, but I'm at the point in my life where you have more days behind you than ahead of you. And you're just, I want to be able to dig myself into a character now and just kind of just go for it. Not the fact that I'm going to turn down any one shots I'm offered or anything that comes up. If something's interesting me, I'm going to jump in because I'm a gamer. So, that's going to happen. But if I have my preference, which I do in this video, then I would choose to go with a more long-term campaign. And that leads me to my second point. Character creation when you're going into a mindset of a long-term campaign. So I'm going to use fantasy as an example in my thinking in this. It can apply to any genre, superhero, horror, sci-fi, whatever. But I'm going to use fantasy since that's where my mind is geared to getting ready to run my own campaign. Sorry, this is really good. The first thing I do is I scan through pictures, like fantasy pictures, like um, even some of the AI stuff. I don't really like it, but it gives me. I look for a picture because if something jumps out to me, the first thing I'm going to do is, okay, what does this character look like? And I'll just kind of, sometimes I'll have in mind what I want to do, and I'll seek out the picture in my, that I can see in my mind on the screen, and then go from there. But if I'm like for fantasy, I've played just about every class that I can think of except for monk, I think. And I have in mind, okay, I'm going to play a big beefy fighter, whatever. But let's say I don't. Let's say this is just a clean slate. So I'll go in and I'll look at pictures of fantasy characters before, from movies, from artists that have done it, like Boris. I love Boris's work. Um, and things like that to see, okay, so I'm looking, okay, I see a character. Um, Jumping from I'm sorry, I'm going to jump from fantasy for just a moment because this actually fits. When I was thinking about a Vampire the Masquerade character that I did for a brief game that never really transpired for me down where I am, and now on Symphony Devaney, I found a picture of a Macavian, and from that picture, I got the entire character background in my head. Um, so that's what has to trigger my brain. So when I'm looking for a fantasy one, it's the same thing. I'll look through. Okay, am I feeling dwarf, halfling, elf, human, Asimar, whatever? So I'll start looking at those, and then I'll find the picture that goes, hey, that's your character, and I'll grab that and then I'll copy it and put it on my screen. on one of my screens. Then from there, I'll grab my rusty trusty index card. Can't go wrong with them. They're cheap. And start making quick notes. Like, okay, let's say, for example, I'm going with the beefy fighter. First of all, does he have any identifying scars? Okay. Yeah, he's got a big scar along his, the forearm. Okay. Where did he get that from? Okay. So he'll say he was fighting in the pits and he was fighting, let's just say, because it was my favorite creature of all time, a displacer beast, and was ripped by one of the claws from the displacer beast. Yeah, I know it's going to be first to the third level. Why are they fighting a displacer beast? But it fits in the background that I'm thinking. So once I get that down, okay, then I'm thinking, all right, what's his family? Does he have a family? Was he an outcast? Was he a hermit? Was he, a gladiator and has just been raised up in the pits? Things like that. So I'll make a little note of that. And then it comes to, okay, whatever system we're playing, then I'll just kind of sit down and I'll roll the stats, depending on how the GM who's running the campaign is wanting it done. And then go from there. But for me, it's easier to start with a picture or start with a mental picture if I don't have an actual picture and work my way from that. Now, I know a lot of people just roll their stats and go, oh, I got it, 18. I'm going to play a wizard. Oh, boy. And that's great for them. One of my favorite characters was a wizard back in second edition that I raised from the first level with one spell and had to hide behind the fighter and throw darts. But you go from that, and especially when it comes to the stats, and it kind of adds to it. Let's say I'm playing Gonk the fighter. That's what I'm building right now. And Gonk I roll an 18. Yeah, it's not as fun anymore because you don't have the 1800 or anything like that. I kind of miss that actually. But 18 street. But then I roll a 5. Okay, so. And then I get average stats, let's just say, for the rest of them. I get a good con, decent dex. And then you're looking at, okay, where do you put the dump stat? And I really, really hate that term, but it applies, I guess. That's where the personality comes in. Okay, am I going to play him to where he's not that intelligent? And just kind of rushes into fights and he's going to kind of learn as he go, or am I going to put one of my other stats in intelligence? He's pretty smart when it comes to combat and things like that, but his personality leaves a lot to be desired. So that would help kind of flush out, I guess is the word I'm looking for, the rest of the character that I hadn't already put on my rusty trusty index card. So that's kind of my process. I don't know if that helps anybody out there. But that's what I just had on my mind today. I just felt like talking about it because when you get a character that you like, and it's been a while since I've kind of felt this way, and I think that has a lot to do with my brain getting old, a little bit of ADHD, So I've in previous campaigns that I've played, I play a character for a little while. I go through all the process like here, and then I just kind of lose interest. But I think that's a lot to do with the way my mind is and not the character itself. But I've gotten better at that. Now I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, it's you get a character that you love, and you want to put your heart and soul into it. I remember, I'll tell this story. It was at Radford. I was playing in my friend Brian's game, and I was playing Darlorn, I think, who was a paladin. And I got so into that character that something happened, and I got mad and actually left the game. Left the game that day. You know, it was something stupid, and I was done, I was fine by the end of the day. But it's just that kind of passion is what I'm kind of referring to. It's something that it's hard. It's definitely hard to get when you're playing a one shot. But when you find that niche, that character that you love so much, and you get that passionate about it, that's what I miss. Having that, maybe not getting upset. I've kind of learned since then, but just getting that feeling like, oh my god, I don't want this character to die. I still got to find my daughter who got kidnapped by dark elves or gremlins or whatever. And I've had this huge quest. I want to capture the axe of the dwarvish lords or something like that. And you get that passion again, and that's kind of what I've been missing for a while now. I am in a long term campaign. In fact, I'm playing this evening, and I've kind of got that passion back for the character that I'm playing now. And it's a um, really interesting game. Um, and since I've opened the door, I might as well walk through it. The campaign that I'm playing now is fifth edition D&D. We were all at one point, I think, 14th level. Our GM said, "Okay, I need you to do two things when the campaign started. I want you to create a 14th level version of yourself and a first level version of ourselves." I'm like, "Okay, this is going to be interesting." So we do both, and the game starts where we're all dead. We were dead. Our 14th level characters died somehow. We're supposed to write, and then we wanted to write how your 14th level character died. For me, I'm playing a gladiator fighter, so I died in the arena. But the circumstances of my death were that I had made a deal. My quote unquote sponsor had made a deal with another sponsor to pay off a debt, and I was just supposed to go down. I wasn't supposed to die. Well, things happen and get betrayed. I'm dead. All right. And then we wake up and we're like undead zombies, but we have our abilities, but we're zombies and under the control of this necromancer. So the very first adventure was us going out in search of this book for this necromancer. And then something happened that I can't remember off the top of my head. I got it in my notes, but something happened and it triggered our brain to realize that, hey, we broke his control. So, and we got partial of our soul, a little bit of our soul back, enough for us to basically become half living, half dead. It's been a really, really interesting campaign as we have struggled to find one, to kill the necromancer that put us this way, two, to figure out who we are, in our past, even though we know part of it, but the GM's kind of modifying things as we go along, especially for me, which I thought was really neat because it was a big curveball I wasn't expecting. Um, and one of the premises is we can't, when we go down below 0 in fifth edition, we go zombie, like TM zombie. We get the zombie stats, we have our hit points, and then we can go to negative whatever our maximum hit point is before we just vanish. We're dead. And none of us, we've gotten close, but none of us have gotten to that point yet. But it's really interesting to see when one of us goes down, they become a mindless zombie and start attacking whoever's nearby, and that could be one of us. So it's been a really interesting dynamic. We got to keep our cleric up. We got to keep people with healing potions up to make sure that all of us don't all go down at once and become zombies, and then voila, the campaign's over. So it's been really cool. But just having that passion, I'm loving this character. This is the first time in a long time in a long-term campaign that I play with my group, who I love, that I haven't wanted to switch characters. And I think that's growth in my brain, handling some of the ADHD issues I apparently had, and just, going through and doing my character on my index card again, and just feeling good about it. So anyway, that's kind of my coffee with the Commodore rant or ramblings today. I hope that everybody's enjoying it. I did a little bit of production on the last one, and you know what? I'm just to the point where I just want to sit here and I want to talk. I don't want any fancy production. I don't want anything like that. I want to be able to communicate with those who I love, who watch this. And thank you for all the likes and everything, all the comments that I've received. Hopefully we'll grow. If we don't, if we stay right where we are, I love it. I appreciate y'all taking your time out of your busy day and listen to what I ramble about and sit here and drink coffee in my Santa mug. Anyway, so again, this has been Coffee with the Commodore. I am Commodore Skip. I wish you well, and we will see you back here next time. Have a great day, everybody.